Hey, I hope everyone is doing well. Some of you guys know I don't really do canon development anymore. Like the stuff behind it, the last big thing I really worked on was like that order of entities kind of thing where I kind of figured out how it worked in a broader field than we did before. We, as in people that messed with cannons. But I was watching some Counter Strike yesterday and the day before and today, and I was thinking, I'm like, well, people have been posting these cannons. They're like, oh, I just released my fantastic 230 stacker. Everyone take a look. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, whatever. And a big thing is sand plates. And people ask for really fast sand plates, whatever, whatever, whatever. Well, this is a 33, so 33 this direction, by 4, by 2 this direction, sand plate. So that's 264 sand, right? It's a little over 256, which for reasons I'll go into in a bit. But yeah, and so it's really fast in terms of like how it can happen. Here's the 255 nuke I made some time ago that really like used order of entities and explained like how that's a thing. This whole thing happens after the nuke dispenses. Just to give a bit of comparison. So you don't want to use cobwebs anymore, right? So this has no cobwebs down there. It just has some TNT, and it is a lot of TNT. I'll address that later. But reusable cobwebs, like it takes a little bit of time. You have to have the sand fall. Normal plates, like the ones I use, just like 4x6s or whatever, you got to have the cobwebs and you have to replace them. So this is really cool because it's no cobwebs. It's 2 layers tall, and it's 2 layers tall for now. And there's a lot of possibilities with this idea. So before I get into too much talking, I'm just going to fire this once. So let's do that. I got the button over here. I know this setup is not ideal. Much more to talk about later. So dispenses. All right, look at that. It worked. And we're at 255 as I kind of demonstrated. So yeah. So let me get into explaining how this works. So when working with advanced cannons where we have to really focus on order of entities, so like if we're doing some crazy cannon that no one's made yet, let's just call it Cannon X, kind of like Weapon X, I don't know. We're working on Cannon X, and we have some specific requirements for a sand plate. For example, we need to have the sand fall 2 ticks before the main power explodes. So we have 2 ticks, whatever, to get the sand from here into the barrel before it shoots out. That's maybe a little too tight of a constraint, but we'll just use that for an example. We can't do that with a cannon, like this. We have cobwebs. We have to move these pistons here. We have to have all the sand turn into an entity and then fall down. So there's a lot of constraints. And then, if we want to save time even more, you would be thinking about, hey, let's use reusable cobwebs because then we don't have to place cobwebs down. We could do like a sort of automatic cannon, whatever. But something like this, or other cannons with similar or different sand compressions, we can't use that for difficult cannoning because some people they say, hey, I got this great idea and in order to do it I need a really special sand plate. Do you know of a sand plate that could stack 256 sand in the cannon but it's in an entity for only 2 ticks before the cannon fires? That's really hard to do with something like this, and I don't know of anyone that can do that with any other sand plates that have been made. And obviously like something like this is, what did I say, 12 by 12, so 12 times 4, and then I have 3 for each. That's a lot of sand condensed into a spread out area. I know condensed into a spread out area sounds interesting, but obviously that's useful, but we can't use it for applications we need. So obviously when working on certain things, so let's go to nuking. I've talked about that a lot, especially because since I have clarified how to do that with a 1 guider level, like order of entities nuking, not the split barrel nuking, which I'm not a fan of. So you have the main power dispense. This is like the start of your stopwatch, and then next thing is you need your hammer dispense, and then once the hammer dispenses, you're gonna have all your sand start to fall. And I've talked about how the height of our sand in our sand compression, that's a limiting factor because it takes so long for sand to fall, for each subsequent or each piece of sand to fall, and then the subsequent one to fall afterwards. That takes a lot of time. So we have to be very careful with how we design our hammer for the nuke to go off, because we have to have the nuke go off after this last piece of sand starts to fall. So we have this tall object that we have to be careful about and time around. So then that makes our sand compression a limiting factor. But what if we had all of our sand, fall instantly, one tick? So we'd have our hammer dispense. We could have our hammer dispense, anytime, doesn't really matter when. We could have a lot of delay added to it relative to the main power. And anyways, we have our main hammer dispense. And then we need our sand to fall, but if it falls in one tick, or we can consider instantly, we can really quickly dispense this and dispense it again. So then we can be really flexible with how much timing we have on our hammer, and or even on our nuke, because it's guaranteed that our second tick off is going to happen after all of our sand falls. Also, since people have been having heart attacks over the ideas behind cannons that use, I'm going to quote this out loud, I'm using my hands to quote it, triangle cannons. It's cool, but for the most part, the idea and the freak out everyone's having about it is gimmicky. Anyways, there have been ideas tossed around that I haven't worked on, but people have mentioned to me, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. We need to have a really quick acting sand plate, and I don't think there's a current solution other than what I'm showing now that can do that. So I couldn't tell you exactly what I was thinking to decide I wanted to make this. In the past couple days, it happened. Probably I was like, oh, no one has a fast sand plate that doesn't use cobwebs. It's probably what I was thinking. And so I can't tell you what made me decide to make it, but in terms of my thought process to making it, I was like, well, let's make a really long stretch. And what if I can consolidate sections of sand into one block? So the first time I was messing with it, I was like, what if I, used boosters like this? So let's say our sand is fallen from the sky, from the sand plate, piston's open, it falls. So some point in the air, these sections would explode. So everything's going to want to get pushed this direction or this direction from this line. So then we'd get concentrated lines of sand. Really, it would be something more like this. No, it'd be more like this. And whatever. But we'd get these concentrated sections of sand in the air between all of these, and then we could shoot it up and over into something, or we can have maybe a scatter to move the sand in a method. So let's say we have a big booster back here, so we get everything in the air, and we have a line of TNT here. So when that explodes, it would send this segment of sand all the way to the back, like a wall or something, like a sign wall, because a lot of servers have sign, they block sand now, which I think is a good thing, kind of. But we have our booster here, blah, blah, blah. And so the sand stops here. So that TNT back here explodes, launches it here. Then this launches it, then this launches it, and this launches it. I think that's also a good idea we could possibly look at. I was thinking something like that, but then I was just playing around with dispensers on the ground. I ended up doing, instead of the TNT like this, I just did TNT down the middle like that. And then I started playing with the timing of it. So this is the first one I made. This is 20, actually I might have extended it to 32. It's 24, I think, actually, which 24 going into 256, it's not as nice as 32, or 64, but this is the first one I was doing. So this side explodes or ticks off, then this, and then these are just booster designs for hammers. Kind of familiar. We'll see how it works, but the sand, pistons shut, sands go up, goes over into this, and it tries to shuffle along. It doesn't quite work. For those of you asking, well, how is this sand here? Because it should fall down this axis. How's it going to go that way with this TNT? What happens is this opens and closes very quickly. We have a quick pulse here. And it opens and closes really quickly, so actually all the sand gets condensed, kind of splitting this block, which that's going to be a problem in the other design, the good one. I'll talk about later, hopefully. But yeah, just to see how this works. It's not perfect. It doesn't work well. There's a lot of issues with it. The big issue is gravity exists. Sand's going to want to fall. So over here, our sand is here, 1, 2. So 1 Mississippi, okay. So it's going to turn into solid pretty quickly, whereas this booster, there's differences in timings between them. So blah, 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 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Oh, now we have sand turning into solid. So this kind of shuffling method doesn't quite work. I got it really close, but actually I think I got it really close for 16 wide or something, or 20 wide, but getting to 32, it won't work. So I needed to figure out some other ways. So I tried something like this. This kind of worked. It got there, and you can see it's starting to take better shape. What I did was I just like concentrated these boosters so I get the segments. So ideally everything would want to go here or here or here, whatever. It didn't quite work right, but eventually we get to just stuff. I've just pasted it all over the place. So this is one that worked pretty close, and I was just setting it up, but I needed to go somewhere else. So this is almost exactly the same as the one that was on that cannon I fired at the start. There are some differences. I think I have my booster in a different spot. And so yeah, I think this one's either 32 or 33. I extended it out at some point. But as I'm messing with it, you know, I'm adding TNT to these boosters, whatever, I'm messing with it. And I just figured what I could do is, like normal, launch everything to the side. And everything's going to slightly push towards this way, because this booster is going to push some sand up and then over while it's going this way. So we have all of our sand up top in the air to the side, and then I have these boosters here. And they're not all on the same time. So this one back here is the last one to explode. And then in order, this one ticks off first, second, difference of 1 tick, so I'll start again. First, second, back to first, second, first, third. So yeah, that's what happens. So when the sand goes up, this one shoots a bunch of sand here. This one here, if let's pretend like sand was still right here, it would shoot it out, or it would shoot the rest back here. Same thing with this one. This one goes off at the same time as the first one. So it's going to actually push any sand remaining here forward. And it just kind of alternates back and forth. It might be definitely overkill, but it worked, and it's what I've settled on without tweaking it too much. So in 3 ticks, all the sand ends up right here. So there's a couple slight different spots. The difference between gravity with 1, 2, and 3 ticks timing. And this is large enough that it condenses everything into one block for reasonable distances, and it works. It was a pain in the butt to set up while I was watching Counter-Strike, and you could see some of these boosters are different sizes, which has been adjusted. In addition, the distances between them are different. So you can see here there's 2 blocks, 2 blocks, 2 blocks, big size, 1 block. And that's because of the length of this could not evenly be divided by the number of boosters I wanted and the size of that, but this definitely works. I'll talk about these chunk mortars in a second. Minecraft's fucking weird, excuse my language. Though if you're still this far into the video, however long it is, I'm sure you don't mind. All right, let's copy this. All right, so let's go ahead and fire this. This is the first one that like fully worked for 33. All right, so it's all out of here. And because of Minecraft and East-West, depending on the server you play on, there's 2 different stacks, but that's cool. So this, okay, why do I have it 2 layers? Beingsad, why don't you just make the sand too tall? You could, yeah, and in this setup, this top one actually opens first, but it's really close. We could say they're like the same timing for the 2. The issue is with this is how fast it opens. In order for this second layer to fall through, if it's stacked right here with 1 layer of pistons, what'll happen is these 2 will fall through like normal. Same thing with those 2, and same thing with this one and that one. And by normal, I mean the pistons are shutting. These pistons I'm standing on are shutting as the sand's passing through, so everything is going to be right here. However, in order to have it open long enough for these 2 pieces of sand to fall, it's then going to be 4 wide. And the issue with 4 wide is it's not going to properly get boosted into there. It's going to be 4 wide instead of, like, you know, splitting these 2 blocks. So sand's going to go up, sand's going to go back and over here, sand's going to go everywhere, and it's not going to go in the cannon. I think we can definitely make it with using 1 set of pistons up top, But just because of how I've done it so far, to kind of show it's a working idea, I have used 2 layers. So, okay, so here I've got its cannoning tools and mod and some other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this again in a second to show you how some of this works. And I'm gonna kind of break down some of the other stuff that works with this. So let me clear out some of the sand real quick, and I'll be back to do that. Okay, so the big thing with this specific variant, I've talked about it a bunch of times, is the sand falls. Oh, this falls, whatever, it goes through, and then when it hits this spot, the pistons push back in, and then condenses it into a small strip, and then the small strip goes up and in, gets shuffled back and forth in a couple ticks, and gets shot out. So I want to talk about now, before I fire it, is chunk borders. This, I hate dispensers with a burning passion now, because, let me turn off my map. Okay. Go to F3. Someone told me this, or F3. I'm looking at stuff. See how it says triggered true? Well, really, Minecraft? Okay, whatever. It says it's triggered. Triggered, true, false. So this game sucks still. And anyways, this triggered stuff, I guess it causes problems. But based on the layouts, you put this relative to the chunks, random things can happen. So it just so happens the way I built it here, it works perfectly fine. This one, maybe one more over. Anyway, it's going to fire it, and we'll see how the tracers look, the breadcrumbs look, compared to other spots. And then I'll play back the recording. So. Okay, so you can kind of see how this looks. I'm going to do it one more time. But I will just tell you, none of the sand is breaking. None of the sand is hitting the ground and breaking. So let me actually start recording as I fire this. Alright, still no sand breaking. I'm going to stop recording. And so we're going to go back to the beginning. So hit display. And eventually we got TNT falling. Okay. So you can see here that the sand is starting to fall. So let me actually clear out that. So as you can see, the pistons are like pushing the sand together now. And see how the sand gets condensed. And the exact position, I couldn't tell you it because considering it jumped. But now it's going to explode. Boom. And let's clear this breadcrumbs. Okay, so we have all the sand just chilling up here in various states of condensation. And it's going to fall down a little bit, not much, just enough. And then it's going to start exploding. And this is it just like moving about and looking weird. I don't think this is its actual position. It's what the client records. But I can tell you the sand doesn't spread out up top like this at all over here. But let me keep moving it through. So there's less of it, less of it, less of it. And here's like the last bit of it maybe when this explodes. And then it exits and leaves the cannon. So everything works pretty peachy here, pretty well. However, I would just start pasting it in random spots. And there'd be one section, it would be, and by one section, it could be the top or bottom. It depended on the chunk layout where it was placed. There'd be one section, one of these, no matter what, unless it's the exact same chunk position, it could be anywhere else in the world. It would have to be the same chunk layout. The y-axis doesn't matter. One segment would break, and it would just, like, I would isolate it, and I would find the one spot on the cannon, and this wouldn't work properly, and it would be super confusing. So I'm going to try and find one that didn't do that correctly, and I'll show it to you. Okay, so I come to this one. I see there's a piece of sand right here, and I'm going to get rid of that. This tells me that this is one of the quote broken ones, as in the chunks are messed up. So actually let's fly through. Let's find some of these trigger dispensers. Oh, yeah, okay, it's like Christmas over there. And I'm talking about right here. Okay, but let's get to it, and I'm going to fire this. And I'll show the breadcrumbs again, and I'll go through the recording again. So we've got it fired. This doesn't look as pretty for the breadcrumbs. So I'm going to display that in a second. So we can see here, there's sand right here. And let me clear out my inventory. And let's pick that up. So what I would do to check is I'd pick this up, 3 sand, 4 sand, and then I'd go check to see how many entities would be if I had a guider or a wall. I would check to see that, and there'd be 250 sand there and 4 sand here. Okay, I don't know what I did. Not exactly intuitive all the time. Anyways, so I was trying to select individual pieces of sand, which I can do sometimes, but let's get to it. So you can see how there's like this weird slant. Like, this doesn't make sense, right? If you're going to sum all the forces on these pieces of sand, for the most part, except for the ends, they're going to go straight to this direction. But we can see that there's these really weird slants. So let's run through our display. So I'm going to remove the crumbs, and I might need to break this down with a couple pieces of sand to show you. But so eventually, here we go. So stuff starts to fall, and it's going, it gets launched up, and it's in the air, and it's not anywhere near as organized as the previous one, you know. And yeah, so I'm gonna find the trouble spot. Okay, so I've gone ahead and found the trouble spots. It just so happens to be right here. And here are the breadcrumbs. So everything goes out, but there's one anvil. I believe anvil is green, whatever. One anvil out of 4 goes, all the anvils go that direction. And okay, so let's kind of break down what's happening. There's, in this case, the level matters. So it's this bottom level and this row right here that causes problems. So let's pull up our history to see what's going on. Just to let you know, we're not actually going to find out what's going on because it's random. But we can kind of show how it's different. So we're sliding, we're going, we got our history. Okay, so we're falling. We can see we got our 1, 2 booster, 1 booster, and 2 booster here. So first, second. So we're going. And it explodes. Everything is just chilling like up here. Like, this is pretty normal. Other than the slants, but you know, that happens. It's all within like a 2-block chunk. Not chunk by 16, but like 2 chunk like square thing. We're going, just chilling there. Okay, so just to break down, our trouble block is the anvil. The anvil is, according to this, right here. Everything else is normal. So everything now like spreads. There's an explosion. So stuff's going kind of wherever. And then boom, there's an anvil there. So the trouble spot just depends on where it's built. So for this, I've kind of outlined the chunks where I know how it works. So like, here's a chunk, right? A chunk corner relative to the button and stuff on this. So yeah. So believe it or not, this cannon actually doesn't do anything special. I know, it's shocking, right? You know, I got this ginormous, wacky sand compression with a lot of TNT and sand. It doesn't do anything special. I mean, this is the nuke. It would work, right? Well, no. The issue is how fast the sand falls. So I'm going to fire it one more time. Okay, I have the sand loaded up. I'm back on Ace so I can actually see what's going on without lagging to death. So let's fire it. The big thing, I mentioned it, you know, whatever, how many, 2 million times. This doesn't do any special because of the speed at which this works. It happens so late in terms of when the main power has ticked off that you can't really order any entities around it. In this iteration, I'll talk about my plans for that, but let's fire it one more time just to get an idea of how late it happens. And now it falls. So I mean, that was a long time. Like, the hammer dispensed and it was just chilling, just hanging out, lounging around, and then the sand fell down. So what are solutions to that? What if we want to have the sand go really early and then we want it to go really late on a different shot? Well, what I was thinking of is you could have a TNT thing like right here, and what it'll do is it'll just cue the sand right here. So we could have the cannon like fire whatever. We could have we could set up a system so that this opens and shoots here at a specific time to where we want our sand to be ordered in our index, whatever, or order of entities. It would dispense that at a certain time. So let's say we wanted this to dispense it to be an entity state in between the hammer and the nuke. So we'd have it go off at X time, But we can't get it to the cannon yet because we still have to wait for the nuke to dispense and then like everything else to fire. So what we do is we have a like comparator, subtractor kind of system here that depending on an input you give it or a time you want this to tick off or the sand to fall, you could have a duration set for like a dispenser like this just to keep all the sand bouncing up here for a while until we're ready for this to explode and shoot into the cannon. Because the distance, or excuse me, the time between this exploding and the main power exploding, we want that to be constant because we need to always have the sand at a certain point in the cannon. We need it to be right here every single time when the cannon fires. So we can't have it too early or too late because it's either A, not going to get shot out of the cannon, or B, all the sand's going to fly in, break on this right here, and it won't actually get shot out, right? So if we set up this redstone system, I was going to work on it, but I changed my mind. Just queue it around based on an input, and then we could select when we want this TNT to get, or the sand to get shot in here, but still have it fall extremely fast. So I'll give a download for this messy sand plate. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can be done to fix it or improve it. We could change how we queue up the sand into like our barrel over here. We could save a lot of TNT. And cool, I hope some people find some use with this idea.